Hey everyone, Jacob here. Today I'm going to take you over the filmmaking process of my film Winter's Fever. This was a really fun film to shoot. However, there were a lot of issues we had throughout the entire process. So I'm actually going to watch the film with you. I'll be pausing it periodically just to kind of give you some details on kind of the behind the scenes of what was happening at that moment in the shooting time. However, first, I'd actually like to run you through some of the pre-production because there's a lot of backstory to what had happened leading up to the actual production date. So for starters, I had actually originally planned for this role to be played by a man, not a woman. And that was something that I was pretty heart set on just because it was my original idea. And typically we have a hard time letting go of our original ideas. I went through, I think, 3 male actors, all of which, had agreed, yeah, I can do that for you, but then fell through at the last minute. And I had actually asked my wife, Amanda, who ended up playing the role, to kind of fill in for some test shots. And Tommy Dennis, the professor, really loved her as that character and made the suggestion to me that maybe I change it to a woman instead of a man. And that was something that was kind of hard for me to hear at first, but after pondering it, I thought, it might make more sense anyway in the long run. So this entire film is supposed to take place in a dream state. More specifically, the dreams that we have when we're sick. We typically have these really vivid dreams when we have fevers and whatnot. And I've always had these really vivid dreams when I've had fevers in the past. And that was kind of the inspiration for this film. I wanted to be able to make it as smooth as possible and as understandable as possible with chaos inside. So, and I hope that I was able to achieve that. One last thing before we get into this is these first 2 shots you see with the snowfall were actually taken the day after I wrote the script. I knew I wanted some slow motion snow shots to open up the film to begin with. And I got up the next day. I was away on a business trip in North Carolina, and I got up the next day and there was this beautiful snowfall happening. I was getting ready to leave. I had all my gear to go to a film shoot, and I took out my camera. I just started filming some slow motion shots handheld, and they turned out really beautiful, and I'm glad I had them to use them. But yeah, let's get into it. So these car shots were probably the most difficult shots to get throughout the entire film. That one was shot in a tree. This one was shot with me out the sunroof holding the camera up front. So this one I was hanging out the side. There were a lot of difficult shots. This is the first shot in the film where I actually had to mask out something. You can see I'm obviously there laying on the ground, supposedly dead, and I was actually moving a lot. I'm not an actor. I don't know what I'm doing. So I was breathing heavily and my fingers were moving. So it made it a problem. So I actually had to take a snapshot of me laying there and then using the masking tool, mask out the rest of the clip so I could get her movement with me masked out. Luckily, she didn't come too close to me where I couldn't do that, or where it would be difficult. It was a pretty easy fix. The music that we decided to use for this film, I knew I wanted something eerie that would be kind of along the lines of Twilight Zone, so that's kind of what we went with. And I got all of my music from Epidemic Sound. They're a really excellent online music source. Getting the shot of her getting hit by the car was way more difficult than I had originally anticipated. It was really, really hard. I had several different shots of her, of reversing the car from her being hit and stuff, and it just didn't look natural enough when I reversed it. I thought I had the shot, so when we left and I came back and looked at my footage, I realized it wasn't good enough, and I really should have looked at it in camera, especially with such a crucial shot. It was just something I totally, completely overlooked. So later, when I was in post-production editing this film, I had to really think outside the box because I knew I couldn't go back and shoot something, especially since there was no snow outside. So I really had to change my original plans, which kind of upset me at first, but I'm really glad I did because I think that the shot that came from that really did work fairly well. Most of it is done in Premiere itself. And I actually just had my wife standing there and I said, hey, can I get the shot of your eyes real quick? And it all worked out in the end. So let's move on. That blurring effect around the screen was something that I had seen. I thought it was pretty cool. So I decided to kind of figure out how to do it. And I think it actually adds to the film in a way that it tells the audience that not all is normal. And you can see I'm using a lot of handheld shots throughout this entire process. And I'll kind of touch base as to why I decided to use handheld at this part later. So real quick, the sequence right there where she actually stepped out of the car and had a little bit of a panic attack, there were so many interesting clips I had for that exact sequence. However, when I tried to actually edit them together, they just didn't flow naturally. And that was something that really was bumming me out because there were so many unique shots, you know, aerial shots, below shots, things that I really wanted to include to really add to the cinematography in this film. However, it just didn't line up. And I really had a hard time letting go of this. I actually put away my editing software for like a month. It was actually really good that I did that because when I came back to it, I was able to look at it more objectively and say, you know, I don't need those shots, which I think is something that's really important to learn, especially as a director or editor or filmmaker in general. It really did help me in the long run to separate myself. Like I said, it just gave me a more objective viewpoint, and it allowed me to really accept the fact that I'm just not going to be able to make these clips work. So, and I think it turned out much better without them. This clip here is probably my favorite shot, and that transition is my favorite transition. Again, like I said, with this being a film that's based in a dream setting, I really wanted it to really flow smoothly. And if you go back and watch that transition is almost seamless. If you're not familiar with the location that we were shooting in, you would not have noticed. Definitely really proud of that shot. This was another transition that didn't work out as well as I would have liked it to, but I think it still did the job of letting you know where we were at. This is another superimposed shot. This is actually something that was masked together. I think it turned out really good. I think it's, unless you're looking for it, it's really difficult to tell that that's just not really on the screen. You know, you got to add the light rim around it and stuff. There's probably, I think, like 10 layers in that shot alone. Something I forgot to mention earlier is this song, Look at the Winter Snow. It's actually written and performed by my cousin, my great cousin, who was rather famous back in the day. His name is Vinnie Monty. You should check him out. He has a lot of really good music. So getting to use a family member's music in a film was super cool. And I knew prior to actually writing the script that I really wanted to include this song because it's probably my favorite song of his. And it was kind of just really nostalgic for me to be able to put something like that in there for him. I don't think he's seen the film yet, but hopefully when he does, he'll be really happy with the outcome. Now you can tell that all these shots in the house were shot on a tripod. And like I said before, I was shooting everything else out handheld. Typically, when you see something shot handheld, it gives you this idea that things are out of control. So the primary reason I used a tripod in the house was because I wanted to kind of add this idea that she had some form of control with where she was at now. And then two, when things do start to go out of control again, the change back to handheld is much more drastic. It's a lot more noticeable. And again, it just adds to the film, I think. And you can see we had some distortion in the music here. This is another really great transition with her. You can see there that, actually, if we go ahead and rewind this here, when we were cutting this, you can see that she was cutting on the motion. So we cut on the motion, which is something Kurosawa did a lot. It just makes everything flow more smoothly. But you can also see here, there's a lot of distortion around the lens. It's something that I wanted to add, this kind of womping thing that you actually get when you put like a warp stabilizer on. And at first it didn't look too good because it looked like I was just trying to cover up a shaky camera. But I ended up going in there with Gaussian blur and a couple of other things that really made it kind of pull in and out of focus a little bit and add a little bit more distortion. Another thing that you can see here is the change in the couch, which is a really subtle transition and change, which I love. I think most people probably miss it, but it's there because it gives me peace. You can see that, when she sits on this couch here, it's gray. And then when she lays back this way, she's suddenly on the couch that I'm actually sitting on right now. And that was just done moving cushions. But it was a really cool transition to show that she's in a different location. Again, most people probably missed it. So this is the only part of the entire film where the actual sound that was shot on site was used. The sound that was shot on site was not good. And I knew right from the beginning that I was going to have to do some Foley work. However, it got to the point where I just deleted all the sound that I had. I just went through and I layered all my stuff, doing a lot of Foley work and adding it. And hopefully it's pretty seamless. Hopefully you can't tell that none of that sound was shot on site. It is something I'm super proud of, though, because I had never really done work like that. I had done very little Foley work in the past, and getting to really dive into that, I had a new appreciation for the art, and it's really kind of super exciting because now I kind of want to do more in the future. I should probably focus more on getting on-site, dialogue and sound, though. So, and that's what I did here. Now, this entire phone call conversation was actually removed from the film, the second cut around, and that was a suggestion from Tommy. However, after seeing the cut without it, he did say, maybe it would be better to have it in there. So I went ahead and added it back in, and I do think that it just pulls together the entire film, gives the audience an idea of what they just saw.
I love you too. Okay.
My wife is actually an actress. That's what she went to college for. She's actually graduating this weekend. I'm super proud of her. She just did an amazing job, and I could not have imagined this shoot without her. Looking back at who I had originally cast, I'm just really glad that it fell through because I think she did such a stellar job. And it was fun getting to just do a little project with me and my wife. It made it easier because we already had some chemistry going. So working together is not a difficult thing to do. So anyway, that is the film. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this was informative, and I hope that, it at least gave you some insight on, the filmmaking process. Typically for me, I do things pretty unorthodox when it comes to filmmaking. I don't really ever make shot lists. I have an idea in my head and I kind of just run with it. Maybe if I had a bigger crew and more people working with me, I would have done a proper shot list and had more organization, I suppose, within everything. But This was me and my wife, just having us two do it, along with my friend Josh later in the day. You know, it was a pretty smooth sailing process once we got into it. The majority of the pains happened with getting a new actor, which in the end was fine. And then, of course, the editing process is always kind of difficult because there's so much you want to get in, but really in the end, there's so much that just shouldn't be in your film. But yeah, the entire process, the entire production process, I should say, it only took 3 hours. You know, we went to our location, we shot our stuff, and we left. And, you know, we had a fun time doing it. And that's all that matters, really, in the end, is we had a good time doing it, and it didn't take too long. You know, it took literally like a couple of hours to shoot everything. So, yeah, thank you for watching. Please let me know just kind of what you thought. If there's any way I can improve upon my filmmaking, that would be awesome if you guys have any suggestions, because I'm still learning. So thank you. Catch you guys next time.